Hello.
Hi. Oh dear.
Are we on? We're live. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the Academy. It's all a bit strange here today. And as you can see, it's me and Julie today. So we're here to talk to you about all the different small bits of equipment that you might be interested in buying, or things you might already have, or sort of go on to the next sort of stage with your equipment. So we're here today to talk all about the bits of equipment. So I hope you're all well. Welcome to the live demo. So I'm going to get started because I don't know where Julie's gone. She's getting a bit of a laughter fit at the moment. So let's talk about the first thing that everybody wants to talk about is obviously the tempering machine. So the melting tanks, the tempering kettles, they're all called different things, aren't they, Julie? But they're all pretty much the same thing. So let's talk about them. So there's two different types. You've got obviously lots of different sizes. So we've got a 6 kilo one here, a really good size. You've got a nice rectangle shape, and that's really good for emptying out the molds. Because if you know, obviously the chocolate molds, this is just an egg one here. For emptying out, it fits perfectly over the machine. So you can keep all your chocolate tempered, that obviously it's going to come out as well. I like these machines as well because they're sort of plastic, and then you've got the metal. And I find that when you're tempering them, they cool down a lot quicker because it's plastic. If they are metal, they just take a little bit longer to cool down. And I prefer that.
No, but I like this one as well because you can actually see the temperature on the front. So sometimes they're just numbers. So this tank here has got 1 to 8 on there. And you do find where the setting is that will give you the perfect temperature to keep it tempered. But this one is quite nice because when we need to melt it overnight, we can keep it at 45. And then when we actually want to work with it, we can turn it down to 31 or 32. So it's much better. Mm. But it is also good, isn't it, to put your chocolate in the night before you're going to work?
Definitely, yeah. So put it in the night before, 5 kilos or so. Let it melt overnight because, like we're saying, is it takes a long time to melt that down. You could melt it in a plastic bowl in the microwave and then put it into the tank. But to be honest, it's a lot easier to melt it down overnight. Yeah. I mean, you've got the smaller ones here, which are really good. So the little round ones, I think you can see, this is the Prefamac ones. They got obviously the bowl that comes out from it as well. These are really good for when you're doing like hand dipping. So it keeps the chocolate more contained. So you can obviously stir it around, get it all the right temperature, and it's going to stay, at that temperature for a lot longer. So these little round ones are better. Then I'd say more this one, you've got a larger capacity here, so it's going to cool down a bit quicker when you're dipping. So just, be aware of that. So hand dipping chocolates is really good in these small round ones.
Dipping ice creams.
Dipping lollipops. Ice creams, things like that as well. Yeah, anything like that.
Yeah. But we love these because they're really good and we use them every day. But they are a holding tank. So they're not like a continuous temperer. So once you've tempered your chocolate, you can get over crystallization happening, which is where you've got your temperature set at 31, 32, which is perfect for our dark chocolate. But say after working with it for half an hour, you see that chocolate starts to thicken, even though when you put your thermometer in, it's saying 31, it's not the right flow rate. So then we would just turn it up a little bit to 32, and we would use a heat gun. So maybe we go on to heat guns next.
One thing I'd just say though before that is when you're using like spatulas in it with these ones and you've got it open like this, a lot of people leave it like that with the spoon. So a lot of cold air can get in there and start to set your chocolate. So just be wary of that. So it's always good to, if you're going to leave it for a bit longer, then just make sure the lid is properly on and then leave the spoon on the top or something like that.
Yeah. But I mean, we're still sticking with these, but they do, the chocolate inside will naturally over crystallize. And when that's happening, it's got too much of the beta 5 crystal. So we need to get rid of some of it. So we could add in a little bit of melted chocolate at 45 degrees and stir it, but only a little bit because we just want to get it back to the flow rate. Or we always use heat guns. So this is Mark's favorite one.
So this is a paint stripper. Is what it is. DIY shops, Screwfix, B&Q, that type of thing, really good. Just remember it's quite strong. Obviously it's a paint stripper, so it's going to take paint off. So just be very wary with it when you're heating the chocolate. different from, you could use a hairdryer as well.
Yeah, or there's these little heat guns that you can get in Hobbycraft and places like that. These are actually quite gentle, so you're not going to overheat the chocolate too much. And again, when we're heating molds and things like that, we quite like these. And they've got a little rest. And you do have to be careful. You see how this one, the wire is wrapped around the nozzle. You do have to be careful because, like Mark said, that gets really hot. And you often find that people put the wire near there and then it gets a bit dangerous.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
One thing not to use, and I get this question asked a lot.
I can't believe people ask this.
It's an actual blowtorch. So no, you cannot use a blowtorch to heat your chocolate. You're going to burn it straight away. Even if you've got it up high, it's not going to work. And it's a complete waste of your gas as well. So yeah. Paint stripper, little sort of craft gun, or a hairdryer. All of those are good to use.
And then the other questions we get asked, because if we're saying about tempering our chocolate, we're always saying use the plastic bowl. And people say, well, can I use a glass bowl or a Pyrex bowl? Well, we say no to that because actually they hold the heat. So if you actually warm the chocolate up, the glass actually holds the heat. And then when we're tempering, we often find it goes too hot. Whereas with the plastic bowls, they're much better because they don't hold that extra heat. So that's why we say that. And then also we're using these bain-maries for tempering. And then I know some of you use a bain-marie over a stove. And so therefore you would use a stainless steel bowl. And again, it's the same kind of thing. That heat can stay in the stainless steel for longer. So you would get used to it, but you do really need to keep it in mind.
But for me personally, though, I would transfer from the bain-marie, from that silver bowl to a plastic bowl to do my tempering.
Yeah.
That's why.
So you would heat it in the
metal bowl, because you don't really want to heat it over plastic. You're not sure, obviously, if it's on a naked flame underneath the water or something.
Yeah.
And then I would, and I'd always make sure that the metal bowl, that I would wipe the bottom of the bowl first before I transfer it.
Yeah.
Because if you think you're going to transfer like that, all the water that's here is going to end up in your plastic bowl. Okay, so always give it a good dry first, then scrape it out into your plastic bowl.
Oh, I think we have a question.
We have a question.
Don't start me off again, Claire.
No, sorry. What about, so for making ganaches, is it okay to use different types of pottery and ceramics and stuff if you're making a ganache if you particularly want to?
Yes, yeah. So with the ganache, we are not so conscious of that temperature unless we're doing a temper ganache. But if you've got your chocolate in a bowl and then you're going to pour your cream on the top and mix it, that's fine. It doesn't matter whether it's metal or ceramic. And again, sometimes the ceramic bowls are actually quite good because they take the heat out. So they're going to actually help cool down your ganache, whereas the plastic one would actually keep the heat in. So it's just something to think about when you're using all these different bits of equipment. It's okay. Yeah. Yes. So thermometers.
Thermometers. Let's work on thermometers. So another stupid question I get asked is these sugar thermometers.
It's not a stupid question. No question.
No stupid question is a stupid question. This is very true, Julie. Very true. But no, you can't. It's so difficult to use these. Yes, you can get some that come quite low, but you're never going to get a perfect reading from this. So don't use one of these. By the time you've got it in the chocolate, it's not going to read it and clean it. So no, definitely not one of those.
But that's a sugar thermometer, isn't it?
That's a sugar one, yeah. So definitely not one of those. Yeah. For us here in the academy, for me personally, always a probe one, always a probe thermometer. Julie's got the other one that we've got
this one as well. Lots of people say, can we use the infrared guns? Now, again, infrared guns are really good and they're quite accurate, but when you do it on top of the temperature on the chocolate, you're only going to get the surface temperature. You're not going to actually get what's inside the chocolate. And as we know, when you're stirring that one around, you get all sorts of different temperature zones in that thick chocolate.
Yeah.
So this really just gives you the surface temperature. It doesn't tell you what's going on. So it's good for lots of things, but it's not good for when we're tempering ganache in there.
Also with these ones as well, it's the angle that you use them. People just sort of stick it in like that, but they say it should be more direct from above, but a lot of people use it like that, and you're going to get completely different readings from these ones as well. So again, like you were saying, don't really like to use these ones. Probe one is so much better.
Yeah. And then, got a question.
Oh.
Claire's waving a palette knife, by the way. That's how I know there's a question.
What would you recommend thermometer-wise for caramels?
Okay, so we've just been talking about this yesterday. So we like the probe ones for caramels, But the difficulty is when you are making the caramel, you have to kind of hold the probe in the caramel, and you don't want to get it too near the base, because if it's near the base, you're going to get a different reading to actually if it's nearer the top. So there's actually a rubber thing you can buy. What's it called, Claire?
It's called a probe holder. A silicone
Silicone probe holder that you can actually put over the edge of the saucepan, and you can just push the probe into it. So you can actually have that probe halfway down the syrup or the caramel or whatever you're boiling, and you'll get a true reading. So we like the probe ones, but it is quite difficult sometimes when you stood there waiting for your caramel to get to whatever temperature you're waiting for. It can be quite a while.
Sometimes as well with these sugar thermometers, they're quite difficult to read, of getting that perfect temperature that you want. So with the digital one, obviously you're going to get the perfect temperature. For me, it's a little bit more difficult to read off of these ones if it is going to be right.
If you are going to do sugar, if you're going to do a lot of caramels and things like that, you can actually get those thermometers. They're actually in the metal grill, aren't they?
Yeah.
They've got the grill round the thermometer, and then it's in there. So like Mark's saying, then it actually sits in the liquid rather than against the side of the pan or whatever.
Yeah.
So you get a more even reading. Yeah, so thermometers are really important, and you do need to check them. So you do need to calibrate them, so especially when we're using my cryo and things like that, we need the chocolate to be at 34.5. If it's at 35.5 or 36.5, it's not going to work. So just being 1 or 2 degrees out can actually really make a difference. And again, if you're making fudge or Montelimar or anything like that, 2 degrees difference is the real difference when you're cutting later on. So it's really important to check the thermometers.
And how would you calibrate that thermometer?
You would boil some water.
Water. Just asking.
But
I'm sure that question was coming from someone who's
But-
going to type it right now for me.
But I learnt, Mark, if you're halfway up the mountain in Canada, boiling water
yes.
boils less. So it would boil at 92 degrees or something rather than 100. So it does depend where you are.
So for
But
all
yes,
our
but for all our
Canadian
land lovers.
followers, that's a bit of information for you.
Yes, right. So then the next thing is all the small equipment. So again, like when you're starting out, you think, what is it that I really need to buy? So on this tray here, we've got all of the small equipment that we use day in, day out. So I'm going to start at this end with the palette knives. So we've got 2 kinds of palette knives. So you've got a step palette knife and a straight one. So this one's just a straight blade, but this one you can see has got a nice angle, and the little one as well. Now, if we're going to pick up a palette knife, we're always going to go for the step one, because the step ones, if we're smoothing our ganaches or if we're trying to layer anything, when you've got the step one, it's so much easier to smooth than, so if I was on this tray, I can get a really nice flat surface. But if you're using this one, it's too close to the table. It's really hard to work with. So if you're going to invest, get a step palette knife, and then you can use it for both things. Is that your favorite as well?
My favorite as well.
All right.
Okay, so let's start from this end of the tray. So brushes. There are lots of brushes out there, but I would always spend a little bit of money on a good brush, especially ones that don't obviously come out. The hair's falling out and stuff. These are really good brushes. Obviously, all the information is in the information we're going to send to you. Is that right, Natasha? Yeah. So these are really good. So you can get different sort of thicknesses of brushes as well. This is quite a thick one, so this is really good for splattering. If you want to flick it or splatter with the cocoa butters, this is a really good one to use. And again, they clean really well as well. So even though they might turn red or black with your cocoa butter, you can get them really clean. That's just by using, some soap and water, and that's really good.
But that's like a plastic.
That's more of a plasticky
bristle,
one,
isn't it?
yeah. You can get more of the hairy ones that I find that actually do come out a bit more. And when you buy cheaper ones from like Hobbycraft, things like that, which are okay, but they do end up falling out.
And you don't put that in your chocolate. Question, Claire.
Yeah, this one's for you, Julie.
Oh,
This is a hard one.
okay.
Oh.
So you said the step palette knife's really good.
Yes.
What's the other palette knife really good for?
I don't know. I don't use it. No. No, it is good. If I was smoothing the top of cakes or something like that.
Yeah, something where you've
got a bit
you
of
haven't
height.
got to go
Yeah.
down to the the table. So like
Yeah.
thin layer sponges, things like that. That's not very good for. But
Yeah.
for high cakes and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, and I think with this one, because often we're smoothing chocolate if we're doing it onto transfer sheets, or we've got a frame, you know, it's just easier to handle. You could do it with this one, but you're going to be a bit more awkward because your
Yeah.
hand's underneath there. So, I mean, everyone uses these, but I find them more in the kitchen, you know, like if I was flipping something over in a pan or, you know, that kind of stuff, I would use that one. There's nothing wrong with this one, but I just prefer that one.
And let's go back to brushes. So makeup brushes, really good, very fine, very soft. These are really good for your dust colors. So into your molds or onto the chocolate afterwards to give that nice sheen, or, you know, making it gold, silver, all of those, you know, copper colors are really cool. So these are really good brushes to use.
But we find it totally different to that, don't we?
Absolutely. I mean,
Like
you try and
chalk
use that
and cheese.
to brush on top of a chocolate bar or something like that. You're just going to scratch it. When you're trying to brush it, and you won't get it on nice and even. With this one, you can just do it nice and even on top, and you'll get that lovely finish.
It's like a really soft layer to it. Yeah, it's really good. And then we've got the good old whisk. So we use this all the time. And again, when we're looking for it, sometimes you get whisks that are really thick. So we're looking at this one, it's got quite fine whiskey bits. So that's really good for the ganache or for our mousses or anything like that. So again, often when we're folding things in, we use the whisk to fold things in, because we can use spatulas. But if you're doing a chocolate mousse and you're at first using the spatula, you've got to do lots and lots of movement to actually fold things in. Whereas if you're doing it with the whisk, you can kind of let it drop through, and it's kind of doing 6 goes with one whisk. But we do like the spatulas. Now, Mark and I differ here.
I prefer this one.
And I prefer this one. So this one's a spoonula.
Spoon.
Spoonella. This one's got a bit of a dip in it. So when I'm using it to scrape around the sides or take stuff out, I like this one because it's got a bit of a dip. But Mark prefers that one.
I prefer this one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just find it. I like to get in now. I can push it into the side of the bowl. Give it a bit of.
I can do
flex. I know you can do that as well, but they do both the same thing. If I prefer this one.
Claire, which do you prefer?
The Spoonella.
Oh, Natasha, which one do you prefer?
The same, just because I like the name.
Oh, I'm
No.
outvoted.
Yes.
I
Never
find
mind.
the Spoonella has a finer edge, so if you get
Yes.
every little last bit out of the bowl, it's easier.
Yeah, that edge bit.
Okay,
Yes.
I agree with you there.
Yeah, and then of course we've got the good old Callebaut scraper here. What would any of us do without scrapers? I mean, this is always when you give away little prizes and people get scrapers, they get so excited because they're so versatile and you can use them for all sorts of different things. But they are really good again for getting into the bowl and actually getting everything out. Yeah,
There's a lot less waste by using one of these. I mean, even using either of these, you end up going to have bits left in there. But when you use a scraper like that, it's really good to have no waste.
Yeah.
Use all the product.
Question.
Okay, so this might be a divided opinion.
Oh.
Right, so you're making a ganache.
Yeah.
What spatula do you use and why?
I use this one. No, because when I'm making the ganache, I am going to be doing a lot of mixing and stirring, and I want to get it all the way off the edge. And I've got a nice fine bit, like Claire said, so I can scrape everything down.
I can do all of that as well.
No, it really is down to preference.
No,
There's no.
I use both. We all use.
No, I don't. I
Okay.
just use it.
I do use that one as well.
It is really just down to preference, but
Yeah.
it was just funny because there's 2 in the drawer, and Claire and I always go for this one, and Mark always goes for that one. And when we wanted to buy more, we just bought this one. So Mark got a bit
I was
upset.
outvoted.
Poor old Mark, hey?
Never mind. Chocolate scraper, probably
The most
important
important
thing about all of it.
Yeah.
You know, for all your chocolate molds, you want something that's going to scrape your molds off nice and clean so you can get all your chocolate back into your temper. Need to be, for me, I like it to be a bit more flexible.
Yeah.
Sometimes when you get the ones, I know everybody goes to DIY shops and buys those, which are fine, but you have to be careful with the metal.
Yeah.
Because the metal, I've had ones in the past, I've bought them in the past, but they rust
Yeah.
really easy.
Yeah.
Also, they're really, really hard. And and they all tend to have a lot more gaps sort of around, I would
Yeah,
say.
yeah. Well,
So
they're
you're
not
gonna
made for that.
They're
are
not
they?
made, yeah, exactly. So they're not made for like really washing. But you wash them, even with these ones, sometimes you get a bit of water inside and stuff. So it's always better to wash them this way up if you're going to use a dishwasher.
Yeah, and then also leave them standing when they're drying,
Yeah.
so
they
that
can
any water
drain.
can drop out
Yeah.
overnight. Don't leave it lying flat. Here we go, Christian.
Whilst you're on the subject of washing and cleaning, we had a question about what's the best way to clean and dry spatulas and things like that. So could you expand on your cleaning and washing expertise?
Do we need to get Alan in?
I mean, hot soapy water. I always find though that if you've got like lots of chocolate around this, it's better to let them set.
Yeah.
And then you
it
can
off.
just literally flex it and crack it off. One thing,
Yeah.
you're not going to waste that. You can reuse that. And the other thing you don't want to do is put loads of chocolate down your sinks, because obviously if it's in the winter months, it's going to set in your pipes and stuff like that. So, always be careful with that.
Yeah.
Drying them really
Dry.
well is
So
really
again,
important.
if you've got them overnight, do you know what I mean? You're washing them, then leave them, you've dried them, then leave them out to make sure they're totally dry. Sometimes if you put them in a cupboard or in a drawer with other stuff, they're not going to dry fully. And we know moisture is the chocolate's worst enemy. So we need to make sure everything's really dry. I mean, we actually put stuff in a heated cabinet. So our scrapers and things like that, we've got a little hot cupboard, and often the equipment goes in there if we're going to quickly turn it around and use it the next day. Especially our brushes and things like that as well, they go into the warming cabinet to dry out, because you can wash your brush and then you will find that there's still some water left inside. And of course, we don't want that anywhere near it. So it's really checking and making sure that everything is nice and dry.
You could check your ovens at home though, because they might have like a proving setting on
Yeah.
it. It's like a 30
Or those proving drawers.
degrees proving drawers. So
Yeah.
you could always do that and dry the equipment in there as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have dipping forks.
Is that your favorite?
So we have different dipping forks. So this one, we'll come back on the full view in a minute, but this one has got an angle, so it's really nice to use, whereas the one Mark's got,
They're
they're both pretty straight. So when we're trying to dip, if we go full, Natasha, if we're trying to, like when you're trying to dip something, if it's straight, I can get in there on an angle and I can get much lower into the tank.
No, I
And
can't.
then-
I've got to
Yeah,
sort of go
going
down
in
a lot.
at a different angle.
different
So by
angle.
having that angle, it just makes it much easier. And then also, we always have the chocolate to the top, but it's much easier then to bounce the fork on top of the chocolate there to get rid of the excess. Whereas,
It's a little bit like the palette knife, isn't it? Where you
Yeah.
can't really dip on the chocolate. I'd have to go like that, but I've got it at an
Yeah.
angle and the chocolate might fall off, where it's going to be more stable on a quaint one.
Whereas, I mean, this is down to preference. Do you know what I mean? Like if you've learned to do it with that fork, you will most probably always want to use that fork. But it's just even for when you're trying to take it off the fork later on and you take it down. So if I'm taking it down, it's much easier to lie it flat and then pull it out. Whereas with that one, again, you're at more of a, it's just.
If that's on the table, it's difficult to. Yeah.
Is this explaining it very well? We like the step one better.
I concur.
You concur, Mark. We agree
I
on
like this
something. Yeah, and then you do also get the little round one. And this one's often used for truffles because people often get them in the pack and say, well, what's it for? But if you were hand dipping a lot of truffles, you would either roll it in your hands, which is often a quick way to do it. But if you wanted to do the dipping, you would use the round one.
Good knife. Not much to say really about knives, but a good sharp knife is good for lots of different things. Scissors as well. We didn't have them on there, but a good pair of scissors for cutting your ends of your piping bags, things like that.
Again, really sharp scissors, because we've got some, haven't we, here that you try to cut with them and they end up on a different angle or a jagged edge, which we don't want. So you want nice, clean, sharp scissors.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's small
Cool, that's
equipment. Any questions, Claire?
If you could choose 3 of those small equipment to buy as a beginner, which would you need all of it? Or what would you choose? Okay.
That's my 3. No, Mark wants this one as well. We'll have to
Yeah,
share.
we'd have to. This is a definite.
Yeah.
You know, you can't do any of your molded chocolates without one of these.
Yeah.
Those definitely.
And also cleaning down afterwards, you know, like scraping your tables after you've finished. Like you say, we scrape
Yeah.
the top of the molds with them. You hand temper with them, all sorts of things. It's one of those things that you've definitely got to have in your equipment list. Yeah. Yes. Then on to molds. So we've got 3 examples here. Of course, there's lots of different brands and there's lots of different molds, and you would use them for different reasons. So often when people start out, they start out with the clear plastic molds that are a bit flexible. They can't really go in the dishwasher because they buckle, and then you can never use them again. And they're just not very, they're great because they're cheap, but they don't last very long. You know, you might get a couple of weeks out of them or something like that, but they're not going to last forever. But then you can get polycarbonate or what's the next one? Triton. Triton is, you can either get the polycarbonate that's white or the Triton, which is like a cloudy color, or you get the clear plastic ones.
As well.
Yeah. So if we were doing eggs, you know, when we're going to decorate them and things like that, the one Mark's got is better if you're painting, isn't it?
Yeah, so if you want to actually see what's going on with your egg on the other side, because obviously you've got to work a little bit backwards when you're doing your artistry on your egg. So you'll be painting this side, but you obviously want to see what it is that side, where in the white mold that Judy's holding, it's very difficult to see. You can slightly if you hold it up, but with these clear ones, it's going to be a lot easier to see your design.
And then also what you've got to look at, you see the shine in there. That shine is amazing. So that shine will come out on my chocolate if it's tempered properly. And that one's got a really nice shine. This one is, not so. You can see like it's really high shine there and it's a dull shine there. So we're not going to get the best results with that one. And these molds, we've had them in the academy since Bev opened the academy 15 years ago. So do you know what I mean? We're still using them and they're still giving us a really good shine. And if you look after them, then it's really good. These wouldn't be still working in 15 years' time. So that might cost you, I don't know, £4 or £5. And these might cost you £15, but these are going to be much better in the long run.
Yeah, also with these ones as well, because they're vacuum formed, you don't get a really crisp edge on the side there. So, you know, like this Christmas tree, trying to put it together, you're going to always have that sort of nick at the edge where it's sort of not very straight or seamless, is it? When you with these ones, because they're very sharp on the edges, you're going to get that nice sharp finish to it. Yeah, as well.
So it's definitely worth investing in good molds. And then when you start, you know, like you're starting your business, you think, oh my God, well, what molds do I get? Well, get something that's quite generic, something you could do all sorts of different things with. So we like the half sphere molds because actually the half sphere molds, you can do so many different designs with them and they look totally different. If you've got loads of heart molds, it's not so flexible. There's not so much you can do with them. So you need to think about something that you could use for all different kinds of occasions and something that you will always use, because those ones that you first buy are just the beginning, aren't they? But then you can build on that.
And with the half sphere molds, they're very easy to contract away from inside when you've got things like squares and stuff and you're not used to those particular molds because you're just starting out. They're a little bit more difficult to work with, especially getting air bubbles in the corners and things like that. So definitely the spherey sort of shapy molds are much better.
Yes.
Oh. So even though we've talked about the vacuum forming molds, you know, it might be a bit rounded at the edge, but there are times when you might want a bespoke mold. You've got a customer that's looking at a particular design or something like that. Yeah. It's a really good, and this is, you know what vacuum forming machines are like. They're massive, great big things. You need a whole room to sort of keep it in, where you can buy these nice little tiny ones, which work really well, don't they?
Yeah. So we find this one's really good. So I don't know, you've got my brother, he's a builder. I do a spanner for his birthday or whatever. So you could put his spanner onto here, and then you have this here where you put a sheet of plastic, and then you place it back up and you lock it in. And then you leave that there for 5 minutes or whatever it is, just so you just see it starting to bow a little bit underneath. And then you push it down and it vacuum forms onto the thing.
with a Hoover.
Yeah, so that
Just a
sucks
normal
out
Hoover
the air.
could suck out the air.
Yeah, but again, just for those things, somebody comes to you and says, "Oh, it's somebody's birthday, and he really likes." And if you can get something that's flat on the bottom, because it needs to be flat on the bottom, and it could be, all sorts of different things.
Yeah.
Keys.
So here we've done like a lemon, but we can't do a whole lemon just by putting a whole lemon on it because it's rounded at the bottom. So we cut it in half, and we got the 2 halves there. We just placed it onto the machine there, and obviously just vacuum formed them for us. And then we got half lemons. So there's lots of lemon molds out there, isn't there? Fruit molds and things like that. But now I've got my own mold, and it's really good. I don't know if you can see the texture of this, but you can. Oh yeah, you can see the texture of the lemon. So it does give you really good detail to it as well.
Question, Claire?
Okay, I've got a few questions.
Oh,
My first one, so you spoke about getting like the most versatile.
Yeah.
So if you're going for half spheres,
Yes.
what size would be more versatile?
Okay, well, it depends whether you're just going to put a ganache into it or whether you're going to do layers. So we like the 3 centimetre. So the 3 centimetre gives us enough space to be able to put maybe a layer of gel or a crunchy layer and then a ganache. You can get 2 centimetre ones or 2.5 centimetre ones. They are a bit small. If you wanted a really small bonbon, then that's good. But you could use them as an insert to go inside your 3. Like if you wanted to do a half sphere of, I don't know, pectin jelly, say, or something. And then you'd put a bit of ganache in and you'd press that inside. So both of them are good. And then at the moment, we quite like the 4 centimetres as well, which are big. It's like a individual portion, but then you can really get lots of layers inside and all sorts of different things. So I would say 3 centimetres is your standard versatile half sphere mould, but then you can go either side if you want to do something a little bit different.
I think as well, it's quite classy to have like the same mold, but all different textures and colors on the mold. And you see that quite a lot out there now, but it's quite fashionable instead of having like a box of chocolates of all different shapes, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Everybody does it as well, but it's quite nice to keep it, nice and modern.
Yeah, but I mean, it could be the Cocoa Pod molds are really nice for that as well, doing the same shape, but like lots of different colors.
Okay, and then what about silicone molds? What would you use them for? What are they good for? What are they bad for?
Okay, so silicone molds are good, but they're not good for shiny chocolates because, again, like we said, you need to look at the shine inside the mold. So there's not a high shine inside the silicone mold. So it's not going to give you that high shine because chocolate mirrors whatever you put it onto. So if we set some chocolate onto a mirror and then let it set and took it off, you can see your face in it. It matches that high shine. So if you're making chocolates and you want them shiny, it needs to go into a shiny thing. If you were doing chocolates and they were, I don't know, mint chip chocolates or something, something that you were adding inclusions into and you weren't worried about that shine on the surface, then they're really good. They're good for making inserts as well, aren't they?
Yeah, inserts for gâteaux, for other
but even
chocolates as well. Yeah. They never wash really great either, so you're never going to get, a really perfect sort of finish to them. Like you said, anyway, you don't get that shine anyway to them. And it's really difficult when you've got they sell like ones that sort of individual chocolates, but you want to do a shell, you can't really turn it over and empty it out. Yeah. It's because it's all floppy everywhere. So they're good for solid things, but not really for like sort of ganache filled ones as well.
But like Mark said, we have a lot of silicone molds here and they're used more for the mousses, for inserts, different things like that.
For showpieces, for solid pieces, for showpieces and things like that. It's really good for. Yeah.
Patent-free, things like that.
Yeah.
Patent-free,
very good for that. Yeah.
Yeah, good for the heat.
Yeah, we've even got some that we pipe into, so they're like a truffle shape, and we pipe the chocolate ganache or whatever into them and let them set, and then pop them out, and then we hand roll them. So we've got some round ones and we've got some square ones, haven't we? And they're quite good, but we're going to cover them. We're going to coat them with something. So again, good for hand dipping. So if you wanted to pipe the squares and then you were going to hand dip them, that would be a much easier way than actually cutting them. Which brings us on quite nicely
to another question.
How do you clean silicone molds? How do you clean them well?
Well, some of them go through the dishwasher and some of them don't.
Yeah.
So you have to look at that as well. Warm soapy water. We've got to make sure that they're nice and hygienic. We need to make sure, because we're putting food in there, that we're actually getting it nice and clean, and we're not leaving any bacteria behind. So
You'll know when it's not clean because you'll get the white, almost scummy feel to it, isn't it? When it's not
yeah,
been properly cleaned. So, you always know that because sometimes you wash it dry and, oh, it's fine, but then it starts to sort of react afterwards, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So you've got to be a bit careful with that. Yeah.
so when we were talking about bubbles into chocolates and things like that, we're going a bit more upscale now. This isn't something you're necessarily going to start with, but this is a vibrating table. So if you were still working by hand, so you're filling your chocolates, or if you're doing bars or lollipops or anything like that, if you plug this in, it starts to vibrate. It's quite noisy, so I'm not going to plug it in, but it vibrates for you. So it's going to get rid of all those bubbles. So rather than you standing there for ages tapping all your molds, you can fill a mold, place it on here, let it vibrate. You can get 2 molds on here while you're filling a 3rd mold. And so rather than you standing there or tapping it on the table, this is actually doing the work for you. So it suddenly starts to make your workflow much easier because you're not standing there tapping like mad all day. So especially when you're busy, coming up to Christmas and things like that. So this is really good because it's just a little independent one that you can have in a cupboard when you don't want it, or in the garage, and then bring it out when it's needed.
And similar with this as well, we want to do a hand dipped chocolate, but we end up having to cut them to get them the right shape. You're never going to get them always perfect.
Yeah.
You're going to be slightly off, or you're going to use a round cutter, things like that. So to get them all cut at the same time, we can use this mini guitar cutter, and you can see there we've got all the strings to cut our ganache. They come in different sizes, so depending on what size you want. I think this is a 2 centimeter one, or 2.2. And then obviously you put your ganache in there that you've set in your frame. We'll come to them in a minute. And literally just cut it down. You lift it off.
You use
with
the
a plate.
metal tray or plate for lifting it off, take it out of the way.
Then you bring it up, give these a little clean because they might have a little bit of ganache down them. Place your...
On the other way.
And then down again. And then you've got your perfectly cut ganaches.
Because if you have a tray of ganache that you're going to cut, it's very difficult to cut it and get a clean cut. So then you start thinking, well, how do I get it cut? I've got to warm up the knife. How do you warm up the knife? You dip it into water. If you're going to start cutting and getting the ganache wet, that's not good. It's not good for shelf life. So, heat is quite good. You can warm the knife up a little bit, but it's just very difficult. So these guillotines, again, if you're going to do, or guitar cutter, if you're going to do lots of hand-dipped ganaches, these are really important.
Yeah. So if you want to do nice bars,
yeah,
individual chocolates, it's great.
Yeah.
But to use this, it's better to, you can just use a metal tray and set your ganache in it, but you might not get it sort of as thin or as straight as you want on the ganache. So you can buy these sort of almost acrylic sort of frames. You can get larger ones like this, but they're slightly thinner. But you can always group them together to make a thicker ganache. There's lots of different companies that do these. We'll give you the information. They're quite fragile, so be careful with them. But these ones have been around for quite a while now in the Academy.
Yeah, they're really good.
These ones.
Really good for layering up. So Claire did that layered praline on our last live stream. And again, she used these frames. So you'd use 2 frames to do your first layer, put another 2 frames on, do the second layer, put another 2 frames, do your third layer, or thinner, whatever you wanted to do. But they're great for giving you that really sharp, nice layering. Because again, using my favorite palette knife, I'm not necessarily going to get it totally straight. Whereas if I'm using one of these and they come with a scraper that I just scrape across the top, I'm going to get that perfectly clean, flat layer. So it's really good. Yeah. Yes. And then another thing that we use is hand blenders, bar mixes. So when you use this, we often use them for emulsifying our ganaches and things like that. So you can use a hand blender. If you're lucky enough to have a Thermomix, you could use Thermomixes. But what you're trying to do is give it that agitation to emulsify it, but not give the bubbles. So again, if you're using these machines, we use them every day, but you don't want to be going up and down in the ganache because you're going to be giving lots of bubbles. You need to just hold it at the bottom and let that vortex form. And we've got a question.
Yes, I've timed this quite nicely asking you this question.
Have you?
Yeah. We're talking about bubbles.
Yes.
And you've spoken about the vibrating table getting
Yeah.
rid of bubbles.
Yeah.
What about when you're putting your chocolate on the base of your chocolate,
Mhm.
you've got inserts and layers and things.
Yes.
So you want to make sure you don't get bubbles in the base. But how do you make sure you don't jumble up all your layers?
So when I'm putting the chocolate into it, so I'd line the molds first of all, and then I would put it onto the. So I would start again. So I would get the chocolate, I would fill it into my mold. So say it's my half sphere mold, I would totally fill the half sphere mold, and then I would put it on there and give it some vibration. So that's getting rid of any of the little bubbles on the bottom of that. But then I would take it off there, I would move it back to my tank, I'd get my nice black scraper and I would tap the sides and empty it and then give it a scrape off. So that's given me my shell now that has no bubbles. And then I'd let that set, obviously, before I start filling it. And then when you fill it, we don't normally, it's more about now the texture of the liquid that you're putting in, so the ganache or the gel or whatever. So we'd put that in first. And if your gel is too firm or your ganache is too firm, even on a vibrating table, you're never going to get rid of those bubbles. So it's more about making sure you've got the right consistency when you're filling the insert bit. We wouldn't put it back on here then.
No. No.
Okay. Okay.
Good.
What?
Just thinking.
Under here, Mark.
Oh.
So then also we get asked about the plastic that we use. So we get two types of plastic. We have the Rhoda sheet, which is this one, which you can see is a lot firmer than this one. This one's quite soft, and this one is firmer. This one, what are you laughing at? This one is a little bit cloudy, so it's not as shiny as that one. So again, if I'm wanting something that's got a really high shine, that one is great. But we use them for decorations. We use them for inserts, going round rings for showpieces.
I like this one better as well, the guitar sheet, because I find it contracts away a little bit better. It's a little bit easier to peel off. Sometimes with this one, you might get spots, but that's just a personal thing.
Yeah, again, I think that's quite nice on the bottom ganaches and things. When you do a layer of your chocolate and it's quite firm, so it's not going to wrinkle up. So again, you can use them for different things, and again, it is a bit down to preference. I think I agree with Mark this time.
Oh, there's a first.
Yeah, but no, we get through a lot more of this than we do these, but they are both good. And that one, like you say, it's really clear. It's got a lovely shine, and it's firmer, so it's not going to wrinkle as much.
And you're going to get different grades of this as well, so different thicknesses. There are lots of this that are really thick. And
too thick.
It doesn't work. Your one works. Why doesn't my one work? Because you got the different thickness.
Yeah, it's the same with this one as well. This one is a bit thicker than most. And again, you've got to think about what you're using it for. Because if I'm doing decoration and I'm spreading my chocolate on the top, I don't want it to wrinkle. I don't want it to move. I want it to stay firm. So this one is much better. Obviously, we're going to stick it down with something to the tray, but it just works a lot better. These two are giggling, Mark.
I don't know. Something's obviously a question comes through. Claire, question.
Back to the blender.
This one.
How do you know you've blended long enough?
Because when you first start blending, you've got a shine and you've got a mixture, but when you start to blend it, you see that you really get that high shine and gloss coming through, and you can see it just looks lovely and glossy compared to when you first start. It is good. It's something to do, like if you're not used to making ganaches, make a bit of ganache, just whisk it and leave it to one side, and then take another bit of the ganache and actually hand blend it, and you can see the difference. You really get to see that one's a lot glossier and that one is more dull, and it's just to do with emulsification.
And Judy was talking about the vortex that you get from it, so you'll be able to see the vortex of it coming up and over, so you'll be able to see how well it's mixed from that perspective as well. So you'll see.
We like to do it in a jug or something, Mark, don't we?
Yeah, jugs are really good because a larger vessel, you tend to obviously get more air bubbles. With a jug, you can just do it nice and small, gets it really nice and tight, stops all those bubbles.
Can you overblend?
Yes, you could eventually take it and split it if you were agitating it too much. Again, if you've got a well-balanced ganache, then it would be quite hard to do. But, like if your fat and liquid was a bit unbalanced, then you could split it. But also, if your ganache splits, it is worth giving it a really good emulsification to try and bring it back. because sometimes when we're making a ganache, we blend it and then it splits a little bit and you go, oh my God, but if you carry on blending, it becomes lovely and glossy and
Yeah.
smooth.
Perfect.
Yes. And then we have one more bit of kit, which you're not going to be buying if you're a new chocolatier, unless you've got a lot of money. But it's something that we really like. So I've just got to move stuff out of the way.
This way.
So this is our newest bit of kit in the Academy, and it's called a Magic Tempera. So in here, where's the right one, Mark?
Do you want the right spatula?
I
Which
do want
spatula
that
would you like?
So in here, we just put cocoa butter cullets into it. So the cocoa butter cullets were tempered because, you know, they've been formed. And we put it into here and then we set it on 33.1. And then what that does is it leaves the cocoa butter and it goes really nice and soft. So this is great for when we're tempering. If we're tempering pralines, tempering ganaches, tempering chocolate.
Cocoa butter.
Cocoa butters for your spraying, all that kind of thing. So if we had chocolate and we melted it to 45 and then we let it cool down to about 34, we could add 1% of this into our chocolate and give it a stir, and that's going to give us our beta 5 crystal. That's going to temper our chocolate. Or if we were spraying and we had our melted cocoa butter, we just cool it down a little bit, and then again we could add 1%, which is going to be a tiny amount, into our cocoa butter, and then just give it a stir, cool it down a bit more. And you know, everyone at the moment is trying to get that really high shine on their chocolates, and if your cocoa butter is well tempered, you get that nice shine.
Yeah. We can also, I think we showed it before, we can also use the Macryo,
Yes.
the powdered cocoa butter. That's another sort of maybe slightly cheaper version
Yes,
of using
definitely.
one of these. But yeah, you can use that in the same way, in a sense.
Yeah. And again, it is all down to the methods that you want to work with, the equipment you want to work with, all that kind of thing. So yeah. So we've hoped we've given you a bit of a insight through all the small equipment and the stuff we use on a day-to-day basis. And then, yes, really, it's down to what you want to make. Because if you're just making bonbon shells, you know, and you don't need half of this equipment. If you're just doing the cut ganaches, there's just a few bits you would need. But we've kind of shown you the overview.
But if you're selling hundreds, thousands, then maybe this is too small. So you need to go to the next level from that as well. So, you know, that's a completely different.
Yeah, and we are going to do some IGTVs. Is that right?
IGTV?
Yes. Yeah. So we're going to be doing some of those on some of the equipment in the Academy next door, because we have the continuous flow machines, we have the panners, all that kind of stuff. So we are going to be doing some filming on that as well to show you how you could use that equipment. And also, if you're not ready for that yet, it's just good to know, because as you're thinking about developing your business and where you're going to take your business, it is good to know what's out there so that you can move on to the next stage.
Good. So I hope you've all enjoyed that. We've got more live things coming up, so keep an eye on the website for the future events that we're going to do.
Yes.
As well.
And you know, we're here. If you've got any questions or anything like that, just get in touch through the Chocolate Academy. And remember, of course, you can watch back all the live streams that we've done before. You can go onto the Chocolate Academy website and you can find them all there at the bottom, and you can have a look at them and find out lots more information. So yeah, so thank you.
Thanks, guys.
We're going to say goodbye.
See you later.
Bye.
Bye-bye.